The New Orleans Saints contract for Jarvis Landry tells you everything you need to know about how the Pro Bowler will impact the team in 2022. We got all that and a little bit of lagniappe for you on today's episode of Locked On Saints.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, Who Dat Nation and Who Dat family? Welcome into this Thursday episode of Locked On Saints, your daily podcast covering the New Orleans Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks as always for making Locked On Saints your first listen of the day every day. Don't forget that we are free and available on all platforms, including on YouTube as well. And I'm your host, Ross Jackson, at Ross Jackson Nola on Twitter, USA Today's Saints Wire, Tuesdays are Locked On NFL, and here with you every single Monday through Friday on Locked On Saints. And on today's episode, I want to break down Jarvis Landry's contract. I want you to hear what Zach Strief had to say about Trevor Penning and how, much to expect from him going into his rookie year. Thinks he has a tall task ahead of him for being that starting left tackle. We'll hear more from him on that. And we're going to wrap up with a news segment where we got like 4 or 5 different stories that I want to make sure that we talk about. So I'm going to throw them all together in our final piece to make sure you're up to date with everything going on with your New Orleans Saints. Okay, so let's start off with Jarvis Landry's contract here because the contract structure tells you everything that you need to know around what it is that the New Orleans Saints think he's going to be able to bring to this team in 2022. So looking at the contract, what you need to know is that it is a max value contract of $6 million, but the base sort of hit on the contract, the cap hit on the contract is only $3 million. How is that possible? Well, the New Orleans Saints gave him a $1.88 million signing bonus as well as a $1.12 million base salary. That's basically vet minimum. And then they put the extra money on top in a signing bonus to make sure that it hit that $3 million value. So that's where the cap hit comes in. The remaining possible $3 million all comes in the form of incentives, majority individual incentives, but a couple of team incentives in here as well. So let's break all of this down. In order for Jarvis Landry to maximize his individual incentives, which are worth a combined $2 million, he would need to hit 75 catches and play more than 48 and a half snaps in 2022, as well as catch 5 touchdowns at least. So the way that this will work is that there's actually a scale for receptions. He can get a $250,000 bonus with 55 catches, a $500,000 bonus with 65 catches, or a $1 million bonus with 75 catches, right? So you only get one of those. So as you move into the tiers, the payment comes up with it. So 75 catches, 65 catches, 55 catches, going from $1 million all the way down to $200,000. The 5 touchdowns are worth $500,000. The 48 and a half snaps are worth $500,000 as well. So that's a total of $2 million in individual incentives. On top of that, there are some team sort of combined incentives. If Jarvis Landry gets 60 receptions, as well as the Saints making the playoffs, he gets $500,000 for that. 607 yards, plus the Saints make the playoffs, $500,000 for that. So in that case, let's say he finished with exactly that stat line, right? Or just over that stat line, 61 catches for 608 yards, and the Saints make the playoffs, he would get $1 million for that. Because he only had 61 catches, he would get an additional $250,000 for surpassing the 55 reception threshold. And if he caught 55 touchdowns and went over 48.5 snaps, then he gets an additional $500,000 per there. So he would end up there with a value of $2.25 million. He could then, escalate in terms of receptions and things like that. So that's the way that this contract will work. It all comes down to incentives. So let's talk about what he would have to do to at least surpass that 607 yard mark based on his career. His career yards per catch rate is 11 yards per catch. So he would only need 56 receptions in order to surpass 607 yards at that rate. And based on his 65.8% catch rate throughout his career, that would take around 90 targets. So as long as he gets around 90 targets, he should be able to sniff the incentives of 60 receptions and that 607 yards. We'll see how much he's able to do in terms of touchdowns there. Something to consider is target share when it comes to the New Orleans Saints, because you've got Jarvis Landry, who's going to command at least 90 targets if he wants to hit those incentives, and we know that the Saints love to get those players their incentives. Michael Thomas is good for probably 120 to 140 targets. We saw him with 185 here recently. I don't think you'll see that much And then you've got Chris Olave and, of course, Alvin Kamara, who's usually good for somewhere between 90 to 100 targets as well. So if the Saints were to pass the ball 600 times, which is pretty good around the NFL, they were at the bottom of the league or near the bottom of the league last year with only 504 pass attempts. So if Jameis Winston's able to play a full 17-game season and he's around his career average, then that puts him right around 600 passing attempts. So if that's the case, you have 90 of those going to Jarvis Landry, so it's going to leave you with around 500 to 510 targets in that case. 140 going to Michael Thomas, around 90 going to Alvin Kamara, and around, let's say, 80 going to Chris Olave. That still leaves you with 190 passing attempts to go around. So people who have raised their concern about too many mouths to feed or target share when it comes to the New Orleans Saints, right now, the way that Jarvis Landry's contract is structured, they expect him to contribute on offense. They expect him to potentially even be the second most targeted wide receiver on their team behind Michael Thomas. If that's the case, there's still more than enough targets to go around to get some of the other guys like Deontay Hardy, Marquez Callaway, potentially Tre'Quan Smith, and of course the tight ends all involved in the passing game. So there should be no shortage of supply when it comes to the demand of targets for the pass catchers in this New Orleans Saints offense. All right, coming up next, we're going to break down what Zach Strief had to say, Saints assistant offensive line coach, and of course, New Orleans Saints legend as well, about Trevor Penning. Can he become the Saints starting left tackle after training camp moving into year one? Zach Strief believes it's a tall task. We'll talk about why as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints. But first, family, it's time for me to tell you about our friends over at Built Bar. You did it. You did it. You sold out the birthday cake Built Puffs. I told y'all they were going to go quick, but don't worry because Built Bar came back with an absolute banger. The brownie batter Built Puff Bars are back. The absolute GOAT of Built Bars is back, and you can get it today. Head over to Built.com. Go and check it out. Most of these bars, we're talking about 130 calories. We're talking about only 4 or 5 grams of sugar, but 16, 17, 18 grams of protein. The perfect summer snack while you're trying to stay snatched or get snatched in my case, because I ain't snatched. But Built Bar is going to help me get there. Built Bar is going to help me get there. They can help you get there as well. So go check them out over at Built.com. Get those brownie batter Built Puff Bars before they run out. You will regret it if you miss them. You will love them if you get them. Don't forget to use the promo code LOCKED15, LOCKED15, so that you can get 15% off at Built.com. It's 15% off with the promo code LOCKED15 at Built.com. All right, family, continuing on with today's episode of Locked On Saints. Thanks again, as always, making us your first listen of the day every day. Don't forget, for your second listen, to go and check out Locked On Pelicans. Today, Jake Madison breaking it down with a basketball team in New Orleans that has a very, very bright future 8th overall selection. Zion Williamson, hopefully back next season. And of course, the absolute all-star in Brandon Ingram and all of these exciting young rookies that are moving into their second year. So go and check it out. Locked On Pelicans every Monday through Friday, wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, we're here every Monday through Friday as well. Whether you're checking out one episode a week, whether you're part of that notification gang over on YouTube and you're coming through for 5 episodes a week, I appreciate you so much for being here. And if this is your first time, thank you for being here. Looking forward to seeing you back tomorrow. But first, today, I want to talk a little bit about Zach Strief. Now, Zach Strief, of course, the former 2006 7th round selection for the New Orleans Saints that became a longtime starter at right tackle for the team. Played in about 9 games his rookie season and then went on for 3 straight years after that to go 16 games straight and then had his full 10 or so year career with the New Orleans Saints and is now the Saints assistant offensive line coach. So he and Saints' new offensive line coach, Doug Marrone, who was formerly their offensive coordinator 2006-2008, they're now working together to help to bolster this offensive line, which admittedly struggled and dealt with some injuries last year, but also struggled a little bit when they were able to be on the field. And a lot of that just has to do with communication and new players in the mix, stuff like that. But now this year, they have the tall task ahead of them of replacing Teron Armstead. And the person in line to replace Teron Armstead right now is effectively, at least for the long term, Trevor Penning, the Saints' second of 2 first-round selections, 18th overall, and they were able to bring him in from University of Northern Iowa. He's an absolute mauler. He's somebody that is going to be a road grader in the run game. He's very fierce. He plays through the whistle, the echo of the whistle, all of that. Once said that his favorite thing about playing offensive line and playing football is that you legally get to assault people. So pretty good attitude on this kid in terms of what you're looking for what is supposed to be a very physical run game. So here's what Zach Strief had to say about Trevor Penning how things are going with him so far, what Dennis Allen wants for this defense, and what expectations to have in terms of mild expectations when it comes to the development of this young offensive lineman.
When Dennis became the head coach, he was really clear, like, we want to be a physical, dominating front. We want to run the football well. That's the type of the football that he wants to play, and so he fits that mold really well. And it's also exactly what we saw. He's got a long way to go. It's one of those deals. He's a first-round pick. There's huge expectations, and yet, he's got a lot of development to do, to be ready to be the type of player that he's capable of being. So what we loved about it was he worked hard. He's doing what we're asking. He's coachable. He's doing all those things. So, it gives him a chance, but he's got a long road ahead of him, and we're really excited for his future.
So that's Zach Strief. That is courtesy of our partners over at WWL-TV. Brooke Kirchhoffer catching up with him during one of the golf classics here this past weekend. And so that's where we're getting this interview from. I love our partnership with these news stations because I get to roll these things, and it's really cool. So the next piece that we're going to look at here is him sort of talking a little bit about the opportunity that lies ahead of Trevor Penning. Is he going to be somebody that can compete with James Hurst for that left tackle spot, or is that spot all his? Does it belong to James Hurst? What is it there? And this is where you can hear Zach Strief kind of pull back expectations a little bit and be really realistic. And I love hearing this, right? This is something to where you're effectively presenting a challenge for this player, or you're articulating the challenge that's ahead for this player. Let me phrase it that way. To where you're saying, like, look, we want this guy to be able to come in and immediately be a starter, but he's got a road ahead of him, and he's going to have to compete with somebody like James Hurst that is a solid player and one that the Saints like a lot. Here's what Zach Strief had to say about that.
We expect him to compete with James, and I think he has an awfully tall task ahead of him. I think James is James was phenomenal for us last year. He's incredibly productive. He's a veteran. He's an extremely smart player, and he played at a really high level for us. This is not like one of these situations where we don't have an answer. He's going to have to win that job. I think that is a tall task for him. I have a ton of respect for James, and having been with him for a season and seeing, how he works and how he's still improving and how productive he was for us. It's not like he's going in and competing with a guy that can't do it. He was extremely productive for us last year. So it's a big challenge for him. And again, we don't give jobs away. We're not giving a job away because he's a first-round pick or there's expectation or any of those things. He's going to have to earn it, and I would say he's got a lot of work to do that.
I love this approach. I really, really do. Like, I love the fact that Zach Strief is being realistic about the expectations around how tough this can be for Trevor Penning. Brooke actually asked a moment before this. I didn't include the answer or the question for that one, but asked a little bit before this about the heat and playbook and things like that. They feel like he's grasping the playbook pretty well. You feel like he's managing the heat okay. Remember, Zach Strief came out of a small school too, and a small kind of winter weather school with Northwestern, and then moved to New Orleans and had to play football in that heat and all those other things. So he understands from, I would say, a pretty intimate set of knowledge and pretty intimate sort of vantage point or perspective what it is that the challenge is that's ahead of Trevor Penning. So I love the realistic outlook here and not trying to like pump the kid up too much, not trying to put unrealistic expectations on him or anything like that. They're acknowledging this is going to be a challenge. He has some things to work on. He has some things to clean up. But if he can do that, then he's going to be a guy that they really, really like. And we shouldn't rule out too that we won't see both of these guys on the offensive line in some way or another. Great question from Brooke here when she asked about whether or not we could see both of them because James Hurst has experience at guard.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, we've always said, and this has been when I was a player, when I was a coach, since I've been a coach, we're going to put the best five on the field. Every single guy on that line is going to compete. He's going to compete for his job. If somebody wins a job, that player is going to be in competition for the other four, and that's just how that's going to go. So that's the best thing for the team. And so that's how we've always operated.
Who do you think he's talking about? Who do you think he's talking about? It's an interesting one. It's a really, really interesting one because if Trevor Penning takes off, right, and he becomes the guy over at left tackle, and there's just no question about it any longer, what's the value? Like, what do you lose in then allowing James Hurst to compete at, I don't know, let's just say right guard? Because then you're in a situation where you're really pushing the development of a Cesar Ruiz. You're pushing the opportunity here to make sure that you have your best five players on the offensive line at all time. James Hurst is an absolute dog. He is a very good offensive lineman, and he's somebody that has played all on the offensive line, not only for the New Orleans Saints. He did that for the Baltimore Ravens, if I remember correctly, the Baltimore Ravens before he was a New Orleans Saint. So this has been a part of his career for as long as he's been in the NFL. This wouldn't be foreign to him. this opportunity to still be able to start somewhere else. So if you're James Hurst, you got to feel really good about the confidence that this team has in you. If you're Trevor Penning, you got to feel pretty good about the trust that this team has in you to be able to develop, but the understanding that it will take some time. So I love the approach here. I personally think that Trevor Penning should be able to start week 1. I have no reason to doubt that right now as of May 19th. We'll see what happens, right? I'll be at training camp. I'll get the opportunity to see it up close. Maybe that opinion will change once you actually get to see these guys in reps, especially when pads go on in practices. But as of right now, I have a lot of trust in what this New Orleans Saints coaching staff is going to be able to do to help somebody with as many natural tools and the work ethic of a guy like Trevor Penning. So we'll see. We'll see where it goes, but I love the approach that the Saints are taking here. They have expectations for him, but they're reasonable expectations, and they're the ones that you want in terms of the vote of confidence from the team, while also not putting too much pressure on that sort of development, that development timeline, I guess. I love this approach very, very much. Once again, big thank you to Brooke Kirchhoffer, WWL-TV, for allowing me to use those clips here in the show. Coming up next, we're going to dive into look, we've got Ron Dayne talking about Alvin Kamara being a top 5 running back in the NFL. Is he? I'll tell you why he is. We're going to talk PFF and their salary cap health rankings and whether or not you should care. And we're going to dive into Darrel Williams. He was in New Orleans. What does that mean for the New Orleans Saints? There's a ton here. So we're going to get to all of that and more as we continue on and wrap up today's episode of Locked On Saints. Now, before we get to that, the New Orleans Saints minus 3.5 point favorites over the Atlanta Falcons in Atlanta to open up the season over at BetOnLine, your number one source for all things sports wagering information and sports betting needs. Give you everything that you need, whether you want to place a bet on the New Orleans Saints, whether you're looking at some of these other lines for week 1, they're all already there. So head over to BetOnline today, go and check that out. You can also get in on the Eastern and Western Conference Finals, the MLB playoffs, the MLB play altogether is underway. Can anyone stop the Yankees? That's something you can check out over at BetOnline as well. You can also take a look at esports, boxing, UFC, horse racing. There's so much over there that you can get in on. So go and check them out. BetOnline.net today. Make sure you hit them up on your mobile device. You can also go on your desktop, however it is that you want to use. That way you can keep up with all the trends and action. There's also live betting you can get in on as well, which is a ton of fun. So go check them out today. BetOnline, where the game starts. Let's get it, Who Dat Nation. Wrapping up today's episode with, I don't know, today I'm going to call it the Bayou Breakdown because I don't know what else to call it. I'm going to need your help, right? I'm going to need your help naming this section of the show when we want to just run through a bunch of stuff, right? Every Friday, we're going to do In Case You Missed It for the third segment, recapping the week. But there are going to be days like today to where there's just a bunch of smaller stories that I want to make sure that we talk about. So send me your name recommendations, whether you're watching on YouTube in the YouTube comments, or you can hit me up at Ross Jackson-Nola, Locked On Saints Facebook group as well. All right, so let's start off with number 1 here. Ron Dayne, the NCAA FBS Division I all-time leading rusher, including bowl games. He also played 7 years in the NFL as a running back with over 3,700 rushing yards, 28 touchdowns, was the partner back to Tiki Barber. The guy knows a little bit about playing running back, okay? That's all I'm saying. He listed his top 5 running backs over at our Locked On Sports Minnesota Ron Johnson show, and Alvin Kamara was listed in the top 5. His list goes as follows. Jonathan Taylor, tailback, as I like to call him, of the Indianapolis Colts. Derrick Henry of the Tennessee Titans, pair of very good AFC South running backs right there. Dalvin Cook, the running back for the Minnesota Vikings. Nick Chubb of the Cleveland Browns, and then Alvin Kamara at number 5 of the New Orleans Saints. He spent a lot of time talking about the modern day running back and, how he would fit into this section of, or this sort of generation of running backs in the NFL, talking about how maybe like the big back doesn't necessarily work anymore, although Derrick Henry certainly falls under that category, though he can do a lot of different things. Nick Chubb as well, but he can do a lot of different things. Great receiver out of the backfield as well. But Alvin Kamara is one of those guys that is absolutely the quintessential modern day running back. And I think for a lot of people, the immediate comparison, the immediate competition for Alvin Kamara when it comes to running backs in the NFL tends to be Christian McCaffrey. But I think with Christian McCaffrey's injuries, Christian McCaffrey's sort of, more passing prowess than running prowess and all these other things, I think that this is really the company that Alvin Kamara deserves to be in. Jonathan Taylor, Derrick Henry, Dalvin Cook, Nick Chubb. I would probably put Nick Chubb in the top 3, but who cares? Like, who cares? Top 5 is top 5. Top 3 is top 3. I don't know that Alvin Kamara is a top 3 running back. I would put Jonathan Taylor, Derrick Henry, Nick Chubb in that top 3 for sure, whatever order. Again, couldn't care less about the order. And then Dalvin Cook and Alvin Kamara. I think Dalvin Cook is more direct competition to Alvin Kamara's reputation than Christian McCaffrey has the ability to be personally. But I love seeing him ranked here in top 5 by somebody that knows what they're talking about when it comes to running backs in the NFL. All right, number 2. Saints are ranked absolute dead last, 32nd in Pro Football Focus's salary cap health rankings. Okay, so the salary cap health rankings, here we are again, right? More New Orleans Saints salary cap slander. The New Orleans Saints ranked dead last in this ranking, which are based on these 5 criteria, okay? Active draft capital, which includes the number of rookie contracts that are on a roster. Number 2, 2022 through 2024 effective cap space. Effective cap space just means what amount of cap space is available, and then you have to project some operating expenses in that. So incentives, not likely to be earned incentives, escalators, things that can end up pushing to the next year, draft classes, things like that. So there's a certain like expected or projected monetary value of each draft pick in each draft round. So you can kind of look ahead to that. So they did that through 2022 to 2024. Which, by the way, the Saints have signed their entire draft class for 2022. Number 3, total prorated money. When you give a signing bonus and then it extends over multiple years, that's proration. There's also restructuring for the New Orleans Saints. That's a big one there. Top 51 roster valuation, the amount of money that your top 51 most highest players are being paid. And then your 2023 unrestricted free agent valuation. So what's the expected value that you are losing going into next year? The 2 big things that hurt the Saints in this ranking are 2022 through 2024 effective cap space because of all the money that's been pushed down the road, and then total prorated money, again, because of all the money that's going to be pushed down the road. But you know what's going to happen with that money that's been pushed down the road? It's going to get pushed further down the road, and no one's going to stop the Saints from doing this. So, sure, the Saints probably rank 32nd in this metric, but can they win? Yeah, they can. And they can win because they spend their money, because it doesn't do you any good to just let it sit there. Saints currently still have $12.6 million available, by the way. Not bad for a team that was $70 million over the salary cap going into this offseason. So, sure, the Saints are 32nd in the PFF salary cap health, but they're number 1 in the hearts of people that love watching teams manipulate the salary cap because nobody does it better than New Orleans. All right, couple of quick stories to wrap us up here. Darrel Williams, former Kansas City Chiefs running back, more importantly, former LSU Tiger, was in New Orleans. Posted something on his Instagram, location pin, New Orleans. What is he going to be visiting the Saints? We don't know. He could have just been visiting home. He's from Marrero, Louisiana. Shout out West Bank, back of Ames. What's good? So all of that to say, something to keep an eye out on. This is no guarantee, right? There's no guarantee that he's even visiting the Saints. He's just in New Orleans, but something to keep an eye out on. Fun fact for you about Darrel Williams: a staple receiving route for the New Orleans Saints out of the backfield is the wheel route. Darrel Williams last year, 92 wheel routes in 2021, targeted 21 times on those routes, caught 14 of those catches for 187 yards and 2 touchdowns. So natural fit in terms of a staple in the New Orleans Saints offense if Darrel Williams were to visit the New Orleans Saints and later on down the line potentially sign with them. But we'll keep you up to date on that. Again, we don't know that he was visiting anything other than potentially just visiting home. And finally, Jameis Winston. This is a big piece here. ESPN's Jeremy Fowler tweeting out that his ACL recovery is underway. He is going well. He is planting and throwing off of play action. That's a nice step in terms of progress. And more importantly, the last line of the tweet, he is working as if he'll be full go for training camp. So certainly the expectation, and Jameis Winston said the other day during the NFL schedule release show that if you needed him to put the pads on and go out there right now, he could. He spoke with New Orleans media not long ago and also mentioned the same thing, that he would be ready to go before training camp, and that he's ahead of schedule. Everybody says they're ahead of schedule, but right now it actually looks like he's on schedule to return for training camp, and that's huge for the New Orleans Saints, who are going to be a run-focused team, but have a lot that they can do on the pass-happy side as well. All right, y'all, coming up tomorrow, Mickey Loomis said that he noticed something different about the reception when it came to Tyrann Mathieu and Jarvis Landry being signed by the New Orleans Saints. Culture has always been important for this team, but are the Saints about to undergo a big-time culture change and culture shift that might make it even better going into 2022? I think they are. So we're going to break that down in tomorrow's episode, and we'll also get you caught up on all the news you might have missed in our In Case You Missed It segment for everything throughout the week. So we got all that coming up for you tomorrow. I appreciate you so much for making us your first listen of the day every day. Now go and check out the Locked On NFL podcast, everything you need to know going around the league in less than 30 minutes with some phenomenal talent, including myself. Right? Including myself. I don't know if I'm phenomenal talent, but I'm on the show on Tuesdays with Luke Braun. So go and check it out over on the Locked On NFL podcast, wherever you get your podcasts, and of course on YouTube as well. I appreciate you as always making me a part of your day. And thank you so much for making me a part of your routine. For everything else that you need in between these episodes on your New Orleans Saints, make sure you follow me on Twitter at rawshaxon, NOLA. Hit me up. Let me know how the family's doing. Let me know how you're living. Let me know how your mom and them. And trust you, that nation. I'll holla at you.